Hi there, it's John from itsmorethanjustgaming.com here. Welcome to you today. Today I'm going to be doing a number of videos for the game Dragonfire, which you can see here presented on my right, which is the Dungeons & Dragons deck building game. This video and the successive videos have been made possible by Hadrian's Hobbies, a hobby stockist based in the small town of Brampton outside Cumbria in the northwest of England. They have kindly loaned me their shop demonstration copy to do these videos, partly because they're friends with me and partly because the shop owner and many of his customers can't be bothered reading rulebooks. And to be fair, the rulebooks in this were actually quite difficult to get through, so I don't actually blame them. So later on I'll be going through the Jumpstart Adventure, how to play, and the general how to play modes, and even a little look into the campaign, because now that I've actually spent time with the rulebooks it makes sense and we've had a chance to play it a little bit, so actually once you get your head around the rules it's not that difficult. So like I said, it's a deck building game based on Dungeons & Dragons. There are 16 character class combinations that you can play, so you can play like a dwarven cleric or a human fighter or an elven rogue, stuff like that. You start off very, very basic, as you would expect. Effectively, you start at level 0, and you do the Jumpstart Adventure where you're just fighting a steady stream of monsters to get XP, or, well, gold / XP are basically the same thing in the... well, actually, no, they're not the same thing, because experience points you do get at the end of adventures. Gold you get in the middle of adventures, which you use to pay for things from the marketplace. The reason I say XP and gold are basically the same thing, the gold is used to buy items and spells in the middle of adventures, which just sort of represents the fact that your character is learning skills or remembering that they have equipment or getting equipment out of their backpack. But the XP and the gold are different, to be fair. Like I say, there is a Jumpstart Adventure where you're just fighting monsters. Then there is actually a 5-part campaign which will take you from level 1 up to about level 5. That is what the core box is for. There are other expansions available just now and more planned, which I'm presuming will take you all the way up to level 20 eventually. I'd quite like to see actually if they take some of the Dungeons & Dragons core modules and make expansions out of them. I also think they have expansions available for increased marketplace equipment, increased classes and stuff like that. As it stands, you can only be a fighter, a wizard, a rogue or a cleric at the moment, but actually that's quite a lot. It's quite fun playing all of those classes. What else can I say as an introduction? It's 3 to 6 players. When we play tested it, it seems to run better if you have a full party. We actually were playing with only 3 in the first instance, and that we got utterly murdered. We then played with the 3rd player proxying a 4th character, and it went a little bit better, but we still got thumped. And there are indications that the game will run a little bit more smoothly if you have a full party of 6. It's very steeped in the lore of Dungeons & Dragons. The artwork seems to come from various source books and supplements, and you will find monsters that you'll find in any standard dungeon. So there are we got beaten up by a gelatinous cube, for instance, and whilst we were looking through the encounter decks we did find a mimic because one of the players loves mimics. We haven't found a cave fisher yet, but I dare say there's either one in the box or there will be in future expansions. So let's have a look at the components. So first of all, we're going to look at the character cards. We're going to use the Dwarven Cleric, which is one of the Devotion class. Each class has a colour in this game. So it says Devotion class here, and it's green for Devotion class, and it says Cleric. It says Race, Shield, Dwarf. This is where you would write your experience points. It suggests you do it in dry white marker, and this is where you would write your level. You start off at level 0. It gives you a hand size here of 4 cards. It gives you a starting gold value, which is 4 gold here, and a starting health value. The health value basically can be tracked up here. There are little clips which I'll actually just attach now. So if you were actually playing this in the Jumpstart Adventure, you would start off with a hand size of 4, 9 health, and it also tells you what your equipment pack is, where you draw your 4 starting cards from. So your equipment pack basically is 4 green cards, 2 black cards, 1 blue card, and 1 red card. So let's just attach the health clip first, and then I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, can you see that? Yep, okay, cool. So I'm now going to just zoom out a little bit. Okay, so we've added our 9 health, and we've now got to build our equipment pack. There is one basic ability for each of the colours. So the Devotion basic is Grace, the Arcane basic, which is the blue colour, is Cantrip, the Deception basic, which is Stealth, and the Martial basic is Glory. Now, the Dwarven Cleric starts off with 4 copies of Grace, so we'll take 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 copies of Martial, because he's a Dwarven Cleric and they hit things with hammers as much as they do with healing spells. 1 copy of the Arcane Cantrip, I'm not quite sure why. And 1 copy of Stealth, again not quite sure why. You would then just shuffle that deck of cards and draw your 4 starting cards. And that's the dwarf basically. Oh yes, we actually need to put some gold on him because he gets full. So I've actually put all the gold tokens into a bag. This bag actually did come with the set, although I had to add a few of my own because there basically wasn't enough. So he starts off with 4 gold. Put that here to represent he's got gold. Other tokens I've got in this bag is the Exhausted token, which is used when a character gets stunned. So when health falls down to 9, from 9 to 0, the character is stunned and gets an Exhausted token. Exhausted basically has a few penalties attached to it until you can take a short rest or a long rest. There are also plus and minus 1 tokens in here, which are like persistent effects in the game. So that's us ready now to actually play a Jumpstart adventure with this character, but there are other parts of the character board that I actually want to zoom in on and have a quick look at. Okay, so on the Dwarven board there are 6 feature slots, 3 on either side, so I've covered up the others over there just now, but there are 3 feature slots here. At the end of the Jumpstart adventure you get basically the first slot unlocks for free, and you can put a background in it. This is very much like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, where you take a background. So for instance you might take Acolyte, Criminal, Entertainer, there's also Folk Hero, Guild Artisan, Hermit, Noble, Outlander, Sage, Sailor, Soldier, Street Urchin. So let's say actually at the end of the Jumpstart adventure the Dwarven Cleric wants to take Soldier as their feature slot 1 background. Once per game during your turn, exchange 2 grey damage for black damage. I'll get to that in a future video. That's quite useful. Not massively useful, but it's basically a free upgrade when your character becomes a level 1 something. Okay, we'll go on to encounters next. Okay, so the basis of every Dungeons and Dragons game is encounters. Sorry, I needed to put tokens there. And this game, despite being a card game, is no different. Each adventure that you play will have 2 encounter decks. The Jumpstart adventure has 1 encounter deck looking something like this. I'm going to use the Dwarven Cleric just as an example, and I've had a look through the encounter deck to basically do some card anatomy with you. So what would happen at the end of at the beginning of each turn, you would draw a certain number of encounters, and generally at the very start of the game everyone gets an encounter in front of them. So let's say, oh actually that's a location, we're not going to look at that just yet. We get swarming skeletons, and I'm just going to actually zoom in on the swarming skeletons. Okay, so there's the swarming skeletons card. It tells you it's a swarming skeleton. It tells you it's an undead monster type and that it's a green creature type. It is 4 gold if you kill it, which it tells you here, and it also tells you this one has the word tokens at the top. So basically that says tokens 2. So it would get 2 tokens, and in order to defeat them, they require 1 grey damage. So that's what that grey circle with the 1 in it means. It basically that's saying 1 grey damage. The red blob is how much damage a token will do back if you don't destroy it, and you have to actually destroy the tokens before you can actually target the creature. This represents basically there's a group of them. So what you would do is you would go into the tokens bag and say, well, this creature has 2 tokens, and you'd have green tokens for them. So yeah, we've got swarming skeletons with 2 green tokens there. Oh, you can't see them. So we'll just pop them up on the picture. Yeah, brilliant. So basically, in order to defeat each token, they require 1 damage. And grey damage basically means it can be damage from any colour. So each of your cards that I showed you earlier on for your starting pack has a colour. So the cleric mostly has green colour, but he also has... in this case, he's got some... oh, he's actually short 1 card. Never mind. I'll grab that shortly. He also has black, blue, and red. So, oh, there's his other one. He's not short at all. So they would be destroyed with 1 damage. If you don't destroy a creature, after you've tried to kill it, it will do damage to you. So the tokens each do 1 red damage. That's what that is there. The swarming skeletons itself does 1 red damage. That's what that is there. These things here, it's a Dragon's Head 6+ and a Dragon's Head 8+, which basically buffs the tokens. This is not used in the standard Jumpstart adventure. This is when the Dragonfire level of the game is 6 or higher when this comes out. Or when the Dragonfire level is 8 or higher. Dragonfire cards happen in the main game, and they start every round. When every player's had a turn, another Dragonfire card comes out, and that increases the Dragonfire level. And this represents things happening in the dungeon, like monsters becoming frenzied or getting healed or stuff like that. Let's say you've actually managed to do 2 damage. So the way you do damage is you would look at your cards and say you've got these 3 cards. Actually, no, let's say... okay, you're going to need at least 1 blue, and let's say at least 1 green, and he's got a hand of 4. Let's say he's got... I'm going to give him an optimum hand, basically, so that you can actually see how this works. So we're going to give him a hand. So his starting hand is 2 green cards, a blue card, and a black card. And each one is worth 1 damage. If they have their symbol in the top left-hand corner, that's how the number of symbols in the top left-hand corner is how much damage of that colour they do. Sometimes they have a grey number in there, and that's grey damage. Okay. So, it requires damage of any colour to get rid of a token. Well, we know that we're going to need a blue and a green to actually kill the skeleton, so we can actually kill the 2 tokens with a green and a black. So, discard those cards, the tokens go. That defeats that. And then you have to actually do damage on each level, and you have to work your way down. You have to play the green card first to get rid of the green level, and then you play the blue card to get rid of the blue level. That's the Shambling Skeletons defeated, and 4 gold is the prize. 4 gold would be distributed between the players. You start with the player that the Skeletons is facing. They take 1, the next player takes 1, and the next player takes 1, and so on and so on. So I'll pop that to one side. The next encounter I'm going to look at runs similarly, but it's a location. In this case, it has a surprise effect. You discard 2 cards. Location, it says location 6. That means it can have up to 6 people here. As soon as you reveal a location in front of someone, you move... Actually, I'll need to zoom out a little bit for this. Generally, players stay in the adventure environment, which doesn't have any mechanical effect, but it's just where you keep a standee to represent your character. When a location appears as an encounter in front of you, you move your standee into the location. So long as the location is open, someone must remain there. It is defeated in basically the same way as another creature. You just have to work your way through the damage. So 1 grey, 1 damage of any colour, 1 green, 1 damage of any colour, 3 damage of any colour, 1 damage of green. If you don't defeat it, it will do 1 damage to you in any encounter, and it's worth 5 gold to defeat it. What else can I say about that? Nothing at the minute. I'm just going to have a quick peek through the deck. That's the Cursed Ground. There is actually one other thing that I need to go through in terms of encounters. Okay, in the starter deck there was no examples of what I wanted to show you, so I had to find the green slad from the Dungeon 2 deck. Each deck is represented by a symbol. This one here has 2 symbols representing the dungeon, so this is Dungeon 2. Previously we've been using Dungeon 1. On the damage, you can see here it requires 1 green to destroy the first level, 2 green to destroy the second level, and actually if you don't do enough damage to defeat a level by the end of your turn, it regenerates all of that damage. However, there's a line between the second and third level, and that's called the guillotine wire. Once you actually pass the guillotine wire, there is actually text on the card that is underlined, and that's when you activate the underlined text. So you defeat the first 2 levels, get to the 3rd level, and it activates its weakness. Its attack strength is now -1. So basically, its attack strength would normally be 2, but you've actually damaged it enough that its attack strength is now 1. That's quite important because that can actually make a lot of a difference in a game. Okay, so the next thing to look at is the market deck, which I've set out as a sort of like a big pile of stuff here just now. The name market deck is a little bit misleading because it doesn't actually represent a market, or at least not all of the time. The market is actually available whilst you're on your adventure, and it's hard to imagine a sort of like a market caravan following you through the dungeon, just waiting for you to kill monsters so that you can buy their stuff. The market deck represents powers, abilities and equipment that your character has access to, but they might actually have to level up a little bit, or they need to prepare them, like it might be you need to prepare a spell, or you're under a lot of hassle right now so you can't actually get that shield out your backpack yet. It just represents stuff that your character can get over the course of the game. So I'm going to take one of the cards just now, and I'm going to use the Warrior card Tower Shield, which is a card that I really wanted. I'm just going to zoom in on it. Okay, I can't get a perfect shot on it, but I'll do my best. Okay, so the Tower Shield. Where is my pen? There's my pen. Okay, so the Tower Shield is a martial card, so it's best for fighter types, though it doesn't have any prerequisite to be used by a fighter type. It can be used by anyone. As a standard thing, on the anatomy of the card, it has 1 black damage and 1 colourless damage, or 1 any damage, 1 grey damage. It costs 5 to buy from the market. It has 2 sword icons on it, which I'll come to shortly, and it has the basic ability, encounters face you deal 1 minus damage this turn, so basically 1 fewer damage. So if your fighter is standing in front of 3 things that all do 1 damage, they're going to do no damage. And if it's 3 things that do 1 damage and 1 thing that does 2 damage, he's going to take 1 damage. So that's actually really cool, and that happens whilst you also do 1 black and 1 grey damage there. You can also use it as an assist. As the assist, it does 1 black damage and choose 1 encounter. That encounter can't attack this turn, so if your mage is about to get squished by a giant, that's really handy. So basically, it's the mage's turn, they're blasting away, but they can't actually defeat the giant. They know that the giant's going to hit back and it's going to do a lot of damage. You can play an assist on... In fact, you can only play an assist on someone else's turn. So they say, I'm going to get squished, and you say, I'll use my Tower Shield assist. So you discard your Tower Shield, or you play it rather, on their turn, and they get 1 extra black damage, and you can say, and the giant's not going to attack this turn, and the mage is saved, and they've got another round to prepare to deal with the giant, or someone else might be able to do it. Someone else might be able to fling a javelin at it, or something like that. These two swords appear on martial cards only. Basically, if a martial character is able to play cards that total up to 3 swords, they can draw a card immediately. I think that's sort of like to represent their second wind, or their action surge, or their sort of like their extra attack abilities. What else can we have a look at? Let's have a look at Magic Missile, in fact. Magic Missile costs 3, does no damage when you play it generally. Magic Missile, deal 1 blue damage to up to 3 different encounters. So that's quite useful if you've got a lot of targets in front of you. Assist, deal 1 grey to up to 3 different encounters. Again, that's really handy if, say, for instance, you've got a fighter tanking a lot of bad guys in front of them. They've used their grapple ability to pull the bad guys all to them, and they're using their tower shield to just survive. And then Magic Missile, blast away, and suddenly they're all down. There are always 6 cards in the market when you're going through a dungeon. You start with 6 at the start of a game, and at the end of every player turn, they either buy a card from the market, or they discard a card from the market and replenish it with a new one, so that the market is always refreshed with a new card every single turn. That way, it's never static, and if there's like 4 things that all cost 10 gold that no one can afford, well, you don't necessarily want to discard the 10 gold things, but actually, if you're not likely to be able to buy them anytime soon, then it's probably as well. Okay, so that's the basic of market cards. They're very useful, and they form the basis of your character's standard abilities, like your Magic Missile for a mage, or your the Javelin Throw is a standard one for a martial, and there's a Blessing for the cleric, and Feints for the rogues. Okay, the last stuff that I'm going to look at in this particular video is the stuff that you need for the basic adventure rather than the jumpstart adventure. And that leads on to a little bit of campaign stuff. So you have this booklet here that says An Ancient Evil Arises on it. This is a 5 adventure campaign with all the sort of like the fluff in it. I'm not going to open it up, I'm not going to read it out because spoilers. You also get a deck of adventure cards. I'm going to look at one of them that is not part of the campaign. It's sort of like a standalone dungeon crawl that's replayable for XP. So I'm just going to zoom in on that, I think. Yeah, tried zooming in. There's no way to get a good shot of the card. Basically, the entire card gives you some fluff. Just basically, the townsfolk are terrified. Monstrous inhabitants from the nearby dungeon continually raid the surface, burning fields, destroying trade, and taking captives. The town needs adventurers willing to brave the depths, and so it gives you the adventure setup. Use Dungeon 1 as the primary encounter deck and Dungeon 2 as the secondary encounter deck. And then it gives you instructions for encounters at the start of each scene. Reveal encounters as indicated in the chart below. First reveal encounters from the secondary deck equal to the Dragonfire level. Then if you still need to draw more encounters, reveal remaining encounters from the primary deck. Place the revealed encounters facing the character whose class, type, colour, blah blah blah. And you just do a standard setup there. And at the end of a scene, which is when there are no monsters facing, standard scene rule applies. You get a short rest after ending a scene. And on the back, it tells you about XP and magic items and optional things that you can actually do with the scenario to make it a little bit harder, but give you more XP. So that's quite cool. We did mention Dragonfire cards there. There is a Dragonfire deck. Let's actually put that center stage. In the main game, there are Dragonfire cards. The Jumpstart doesn't use them. Basically, at the start of any player round, which is before any player starts their first turn, you reveal a Dragonfire card usually, and that has some effects. So this one, I'll zoom in on that, see? That's not zooming in. That one is Haunted, and it's got some flavour text about Haunted. It's got some symbols on it. This one is a deadfall symbol. Basically, when this card is discarded, you trigger that. This one is Deadfall, and when the Dragonfire level is at 5 or higher. Basically, when you get to the end of a round, which is when all the players have had a turn, you discard the Dragonfire card into a discard pile and reveal a new one. The discard pile, the number of Dragonfire cards in it, that is your Dragonfire level, and that is what affects Dragonfire level on monsters. If, however, at the end of a round, when all players have had their turns and there are no monsters out, the scene ends. And you bury the Dragonfire card, so the Dragonfire level doesn't go up. You have a short rest, which has some effects in the sort of like the basic game, and then you go on to the next scene where you put out new encounters, and then you start again. What else are we looking at? We also have these sort of like stickers. These are the stickers that you can actually put on that we spoke about earlier in the video. So again, Acolyte, Criminal, Entertainer, like I said, we went through them earlier, but you would only start putting them, one of them on after the jump start, and then as you start getting XP for completing adventures, you can actually buy class abilities. So, for instance, Fair Share. It costs 15 XP. When another player defeats an encounter facing you, gain gold equal to the active player's share instead of your normal share. Okay, stuff like that. And at the end of every adventure, magical items are handed out, ranging from really very rare to common. So I'm just going to focus in on one of the rare items, the very rare items actually. So we'll need to zoom out a little bit, not zooming in. This is the Cloak of Stars. It's an arcane miscellaneous. Starts and remains in play. Magic missile may affect one additional encounter, and you add one magic missile card to your equipment pack at the start of the game, so that's quite handy. The magical items are your standard types of magical items: wands, gems, potions, armors, swords, swords of really sharp things, hammers that are really blunt and strong, magical armors, boots of sneaking, that sort of thing. At the end of an adventure, it will tell you in the book how many magical items you are due to draw. And that's dependent on the level of the adventure, if I recall. You deal them out randomly, or rather you deal them out one at a time. You can trade the magic items because sometimes you're not going to be able to use them. Magic items persist in your backpack, whereas the skills that you bought at the marketplace don't really do that, as far as I can determine. I've not been able to find an explicit rule that says one way or the other, but it seems to make most sense that you put back your tower shields and your feints and your bless spells and things like that, but you keep your magic items. And you keep your things like Fair Share and your acolytes and whatnot. So that's basically the components of Dragonfire. Thanks for sticking with this video. The next video is going to go through the Jumpstart game, so I'll be reiterating a fair amount of what I've gone through here, but I'll be doing it in the sequence of an actual play turn, so that you can actually play a Jumpstart adventure. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.